Welcome and thank for joining us on this holistic health journey. I am Ambassador Herbal Shivas, holistic health specialist, and I'm honored to be your travel guide today. Our conversation is open, respectful, and direct. Nothing shared here is intended to be personal or offensive. Our goal is simple: education, awareness, and empowerment. With all due respect, let's get strictly into business. We wash our clothes after exposure to sun, rain, and harsh conditions. In the same way, our bodies require regular cleansings to remove the toxin we accumulate daily. One thing is clear: toxin do not eliminate all toxin from the body. It's not possible. But if we eat all our foods, our drinks, those are things that have all toxin in it, and we are taking it in our system. And here comes our pressure. Where it developed from. Don't take our pressure medications. Okay? But what are you eating? Your lifestyle. So if we eat all this food, all this chicken, meat with all those chemical components, gets deposited in our system. Our immune system start to reject. Now we start to have pressure, diabetes, or chronic condition. We certainly don't take our pills. You are only either on a case. Many people say, I know what I eat. That may be truth. But knowing what we eat is not the same as understanding what our food contains. As a holistic health specialist, I love listening to people's health story, especially for those who have some money. Some of them believe that they eat well, drink wisely, and take a little bit of no medication. Only sometimes take their baby aspirin, their baby paracetamol. How is that possible? Because if you tell me what you eat, what you drink, I'm going to tell you the kinds of hospital bills that are waiting tomorrow. Clean your blood. That's the first thing we have to do. Clean your blood. Your colon, clean it. Then your immune system will be happy with you. The kidney will be happy with you. The liver will be happy with you. The heart will be at rest. But if you tell me you know what you are eating, what you are drinking, then you are telling me that, oh, my pressure is killing me. Come on now. Because I know very well that if you don't want to get sick, don't eat. But if you decide to eat, you have to know what you are eating and how to clean it for your system. My role is not to convince anyone. No. But to support those who really want to take personal responsibility for their health, naturally and intentionally. I'm willing to help them. By the end of this journey, you will begin to see food differently, with a deeper understanding of what we consume. The human body is not designed to handle constant chemical exposure. Sometimes many people do not really get concerned about their health until it slips away from them, or after the age of 60. That's the time a lot of people get concerned to get to know, oh, I think I have something called kidney, I have something called liver, I have something called prostate. Our program empowers you to take natural responsibility for your health through education, guidance, and hands-on training. We focus on helping the body to eliminate, detoxify, and neutralize toxins accumulated over the years from our foods, our drinks, our medications, our lifestyle. Please watch a video, and afterward we will share simple practical holistic health approaches to help support and restore the body after years of stress and exposure. Please do me a favor. Like, share the video.
You think you know what you're eating until you learn how it's really made. From hot dogs whipped into a pink slurry filled with bone powder, hair specks, and liquefied scraps, to imitation crab scrubbed into a white paste that once carried parasites and rot before being dyed back to life, and gelatin desserts boiled out of heaps of discarded bones, skin, and fatty tissue, the truth is far uglier than any label suggests. These aren't rare accidents. This is the system. And once you witness what really happens behind those factory doors, you'll never look at these foods the same way again. Look at a hot dog. It is hard to imagine what it once was. Inside the factory, workers start with leftover scraps of pork and beef that were never meant to be eaten on their own. These include thick bands of fat, tough connective tissue, and stringy sinew. All of it is forced through a high-pressure sieve until it turns into a pink paste that looks like raw toothpaste than food. The part no label ever explains is what actually ends up inside that slurry. Bone dust gets in because small leftover bones are crushed so hard they turn into powder and mix straight into the paste. Pieces of blood vessels get mixed in when veins and arteries attached to the meat scraps are shredded in the grinder. Residual bile gets into the slurry because some organ pieces are not cleaned well, and a little of that bitter yellow fluid stays on them when they are thrown into the machine. Microscopic hair also gets pulled into the mix because small hairs stuck to the skin scraps are ground until they completely disappear into the paste. And the shocking part is this: none of it is accidental. This is simply how the system works. Chicken breasts. Chicken nuggets look harmless, but the process behind them is something most people would never want to see. It begins with mechanically separated chicken, where leftover carcasses are pushed through a machine so hard that bones, cartilage, skin, and scraps all dissolve into a pink, goo-like paste. This isn't clean chicken meat. It's whatever is left after the real cuts are removed. Factories bulk this paste up with cornstarch, wheat gluten, and soy protein because the actual meat content is too low to hold a shape. Stabilizers and binders keep the mush from falling apart, and chemical flavor enhancers are added because the paste barely tastes like chicken at all. The filth becomes impossible to ignore when you look closely at the slurry itself. Bone pieces get crushed so hard they turn into a gritty powder that stays in the mix. Marrow from inside the bones leaks out and smears through the paste, giving parts of it a brown, dirty tint. The paste sits in huge metal tubs called vats, basically giant open buckets that hold the slurry. When the slurry sits too long, a gray, sticky skin grows on top, almost like scum on dirty dishwater, and workers have to scrape it off before mixing everything together again. Some plants use frozen chicken blocks that start to thaw in storage, and the outer layer becomes wet, slippery, and sour-smelling, but it still gets thrown into the grinder. Batches that come out wrong are not always thrown away. Sometimes they are dumped straight back into the new paste. Conveyor belts get covered with dried nuggets of old slurry, and those crusty flakes break off and fall right into fresh mixes. Every part of the system gathers buildup, and most of it ends up back inside the product without anyone seeing it. Imitation crab. Imitation crab looks clean and harmless, but the real process behind it is far from that. Factories start with cheap white fish, usually pollock that has been frozen for months. Workers wash this fish over and over until all natural flavor, color, and smell are stripped away. What is left is a bland, soggy paste. To rebuild it into something edible, companies mix in starch, egg whites, sugar, and salt to give the paste some firmness. Then they paint red dye onto the outside to fake the look of real crab meat. After that, the mixture is heated and pressed into sticks or flakes. The shocking part is what the washing steps hide. The wash water is full of liquefied fish scraps and is often dumped straight back into waterways. Small parasites that were inside the raw fish get ground into the final paste without anyone noticing. Some cheaper plants even use fish that were starting to rot, trusting the repeated washing to kill the smell. Surimi waste piles sit in open bins and can ferment, giving off strong ammonia-like fumes. Factory floors get coated in slippery fish residue that can slide into new batches. Dye tanks sometimes collect floating skin particles before everything gets stirred together. And the sad truth is, most people never question it. They see a neat little crab stick and have no idea how much waste, rot, and hidden filth had to be washed, mixed, dyed, and reshaped just to make it look like seafood. Vanilla flavoring. Vanilla flavoring sounds gentle and natural, but most of what people eat has nothing to do with real vanilla beans. Real vanilla requires workers to hand-pollinate each flower and then wait months for the pods to cure, which makes it expensive. Food companies avoid that cost by using synthetic vanillin, a chemical copy of vanilla flavor. Most synthetic vanillin comes from lignin, which is the leftover wood pulp waste from paper mills or from petrochemicals made in industrial plants. Once you see how it is produced, it becomes hard to think of it as food. The lignin usually comes from tree bark scraps that were soaked in chemicals and originally meant to be burned as waste. Petrochemical vanillin can contain small amounts of industrial solvents until it is filtered. Some factories use sulfuric acid baths and chemical reactors to break down the waste and convert it into flavoring. Workers say the tanks often smell like hot plastic, gasoline, or burnt chemicals. In lower-grade facilities, the vanillin comes from plants built next to toxic waste processing sites, and the raw material arrives stained, dark, and harsh-smelling before refinement. Most people taste vanilla and imagine a plant. They rarely imagine wood waste, acid tanks, and chemical fumes. Canned beef stew seems hearty from the outside, but the ingredients behind it often come from the lowest quality cuts available. Manufacturers start with the hardest, cheapest scraps of meat, pieces from animals that were too old, too tough, or simply not usable for anything fresh. These scraps are cooked for so long that the structure of the meat breaks down completely. Whatever survives is suspended in a thick gravy made from starches, then heat sterilized so the can sit on shelves for years. The real mess starts in plants that fail to meet even the basic standards. Meat left in freezers too long can dry out, turn gray, or form icy crusts. Instead of throwing it away, some places still toss it into the batch because they know the long boiling will make everything soft enough to blend in. The gravy can be thickened so much that it acts like a cover, hiding clumps of fat that melt during cooking and then turn back into rubbery lumps once the stew cools. Vegetables can be just as bad. Instead of using fresh carrots and potatoes, some factories grab soft, bruised, or discolored leftover produce that stores rejected. These pieces break apart and disappear into the mix, so most people never notice. Another trick used in lower quality plants is mixing old stew with new stew. If a previous batch came out too thin or too thick, workers sometimes dump it into the new batch to make everything look the same. In the worst cases, cans may bulge slightly. This usually means the contents started to ferment or spoil before sealing. And once you know that, it becomes very hard to see canned stew as comfort food ever again. Cheap Parmesan. Cheap grated Parmesan looks simple, but the shortcuts behind it make it very different from the real cheese people expect. Most pre-grated Parmesan is mixed with cellulose, a fine powder made from wood pulp to stop the cheese from clumping. In many low-cost brands, this filler can make up a surprising portion of the product, sometimes as high as 20%. Some companies stretch the batch even further by blending in cheaper cheeses, which changes the flavor but boosts profit. The problems appear when factories fail to meet basic standards. Wood pulp for cellulose can come from recycled paper plants, and in rare cases from suppliers that process old construction lumber before bleaching it. When too much cellulose is added, the cheese forms a chalky, mud-like texture inside storage bins, especially when humidity rises. Some facilities have been caught grinding cheese blocks that still had spots of mold on them, trusting the heat step to sanitize what should have been discarded. In extreme inspection failures, bulk shipments have been found containing dust fragments or tiny mites that slipped in during handling. Even floor contamination has occurred when blocks touched moldy surfaces before processing. Consumers think they're buying cheese. They're often buying whatever a factory can get away with. Store-bought sushi looks neat in its plastic tray, but the story behind it is nothing like the fresh sushi people imagine. The real problems show up when stores or suppliers fail to meet proper standards. Carbon monoxide-treated tuna is one of the biggest issues. This tuna is exposed to carbon monoxide gas, so it stays bright red even when it is old or spoiling. The gas locks in the color and hides the brown oxidized flesh that would normally warn people the fish has gone bad. Without that warning color, the tuna can look fresh while the inside is already breaking down and starting to smell metallic. Some packages leak a cloudy liquid called protein drip, which is the juice that comes out of aging fish. This liquid can pool inside the tray and becomes a perfect place for bacteria to multiply. At busy sushi counters, knives may be used on different fish without washing, and a thin layer of fish slime can spread from one roll to the next. Rice can fail too. When the preservatives don't hold, the rice dries into a hard starch brick. Workers sometimes spray it with warm water to soften it instead of making a new batch. The seaweed wrap also breaks down. If it sits too long, it absorbs moisture and becomes soggy, mushy, and swamp-like rather than crisp. Gelatin desserts. Gelatin desserts look bright and fun, but if you knew what goes into them, you might not see them the same way again. Factories start by gathering bones, skin, and connective tissue from slaughterhouses, the parts most people would never imagine turning into a dessert. These pieces are boiled for hours until the collagen breaks out of them. That collagen is what gives gelatin its firm, jiggly feel. Once the boiling is done, the collagen-rich liquid is dried into a powder and later mixed with artificial colors and flavors. By the time it reaches your spoon, it looks harmless. Most people never picture what those ingredients looked like at the beginning. What you don't see is how messy the process can become when plants don't follow proper standards. Some of the bones come from animals that were rejected for regular meat because they were bruised, damaged, or too far gone. At some rendering sites, bones sit in outdoor heaps before processing, and rainwater, insects, and even wildlife can get into the pile. When these heaps finally boil, they release a greasy steam that sticks to nearby walls. The raw mix can contain blackened bone tips, chunks of fat, and scraps of tissue that workers skim off. Thin, hair-like fibers float to the surface and must be removed. Even insects sometimes fall into the vats and are strained out later. Commercial ice cream feels comforting when you scoop it, but the way it's made would make most people stop mid-bite. A lot of cheap ice cream is not even close to real ice cream. Factories whip in so much air that half of what you're eating is literally nothing. Real ingredients are expensive, so companies rely on stabilizers to stop ice crystals from forming and artificial flavors and colors to fake the taste of vanilla, chocolate, or fruit. Many vanilla products don't use vanilla at all. The flavor often comes from petrochemicals made in industrial plants. The part no one tells you about is how filthy things can get when factories don't follow proper standards. Some stabilizers are made from seaweed, but not the clean kind you picture from the beach. Factories use a rotting, mushy seaweed slurry that smells bad until it goes through heavy chemical treatment. In some plants, the basic ice cream mix shows up as a warm, sour liquid. It does not look or smell like anything you'd want to eat. It only becomes appealing after companies add strong flavor chemicals to cover the odor. When stabilizers don't work the way they should, the mix can fall apart. You end up with a layer of foamy liquid on top and thick, rubber-like chunks at the bottom. Inside the machines, old dairy residue can build up over time. This old crust can grow yeast or mold if the equipment is not cleaned well. As the machines run, little pieces of this old buildup can break off and mix into the new ice cream without anyone noticing right away. The artificial colors are also intense. They stick to the equipment and turn parts of it bright neon. Workers often have to scrape these stains off with tools because regular washing won't remove them. Injected chicken breasts look big and juicy in the package, but most people don't realize they're paying extra for water, not meat. Many commercial producers inject chicken with a mix of water, salt, and phosphates. This can make up as much as 20% of the chicken's weight. When you cook it, that extra liquid leaks out and steams in the pan, which is why the chicken sometimes refuses to brown properly. It wasn't natural moisture. It was added. The dirty side of the process shows up when standards slip. The injection needles pierce hundreds of chicken breasts before anyone stops to sanitize them. As the needles go in and out, they can drag tiny feather particles and bits of skin straight into the meat. The brine itself sits in large tanks, and if those tanks aren't handled correctly, sediment layers form at the bottom made of old proteins, additives, and thick sludge that should have been filtered out. Water-injected chicken also spoils faster, so producers sometimes rely on packaging gases to hide a sour or metallic smell. Inside the chicken, the excess brine can gather and form pockets of gel-like fluid that ooze out when you cut into it. Once you see how much water is pumped into fresh chicken, it becomes clear you're paying for far more than meat. Farmed salmon looks bright and healthy in the store, but most people have no idea how unnatural that color actually is. In crowded salmon farms, the fish are fed pelletized food made from grain and processed fish meal. This feed has none of the natural red pigments that wild salmon get from eating shrimp and krill. Without help, farmed salmon flesh would be gray. To fix this, producers add synthetic astaxanthin to the feed. This dye changes the flesh from gray to pink, and the exact shade is chosen from a salmon color chart, almost like picking paint. The problems begin when farms fail to meet proper standards. Parasites can spread quickly, and sea lice often attach themselves to the fish in swarms, chewing open wounds that never fully heal. Because the pens are so crowded, disease passes from fish to fish easily, so antibiotics are used heavily. Waste builds up under the pens until it becomes a thick layer of fecal sludge that the fish swim through every day. Some salmon develop deformities because of poor water quality and constant stress. When sick salmon die, they sometimes float in the pens for hours before workers remove them. Their fat can store pollutants from low-quality feed or dirty water, and those pollutants stay in the flesh people eventually eat. Energy drinks look bold and exciting on the outside, but what goes into them is far from natural. Most companies do not use caffeine from coffee or tea. Instead, they use synthetic caffeine made in labs, along with synthetic taurine created through chemical processes. The bright colors in the can often come from petroleum-derived dyes. When you mix huge amounts of sugar with these artificial stimulants, you get that sudden energy feeling, which is really just your body reacting to a chemical shock. The ugly side of production appears when factories fall below proper standards. Synthetic caffeine can be made using harsh chemicals like urea and chloroacetic acid. The raw caffeine powder is so strong that workers must wear full masks, because a small spill can create a toxic dust cloud. The syrup base used for many drinks arrives as a thick, tar-like concentrate that has to be diluted before it looks anything like a beverage. Artificial colors can stain drains blue or green because they cling to surfaces so strongly. Some stimulant ingredients break down when exposed to heat and leave behind foul-smelling residues that must be cleaned off the equipment. Packaged bread looks soft and comforting, but almost nothing about it is natural. Companies keep the bread fluffy by adding chemical dough conditioners. Real dough rises slowly on its own, but factory dough is forced to rise using chemicals that make it stretch and soften. Mold inhibitors are added so the bread can sit on shelves for weeks without turning green. Instead of a simple recipe, most packaged bread contains a long list of chemicals designed to keep costs low and appearance perfect. The real filth shows up when factories fail to meet basic standards. Azodicarbonamide, a chemical also used in foam plastics, can break down in the oven and leave behind harmful residues, especially when equipment overheats. Some dough conditioners show up as old yellowing chemical blocks that workers must shave or grate into the mixture by hand. Flour is often bleached with chlorine gas to make it look bright white, and that gas leaves behind trace byproducts no one thinks about. Inside the mixers, old dough and grease can build up. If the machinery isn't maintained, tiny metal shavings can fall straight into the dough. Dough that sits too long can grow long, slimy bacterial strands that get mixed back in because the machine simply needs everything together. Bottled smoothies and juices. Bottled smoothies and juices look healthy on the outside, but once you learn how they're made, it's hard to see them as anything but flavored sugar water. These drinks are pasteurized, which means they're heated so hot that most enzymes, vitamins, and natural nutrients are destroyed. Whatever survives sits in bottles for weeks or even months before anyone drinks it. By the time it reaches you, the fresh fruit on the label is long gone. What companies don't advertise is how much of the nutrition has to be added back in. They mix in synthetic vitamins, but many of these break down quickly, so the drink loses even more value while it sits in storage. Laws even allow tiny mold fragments in juice as long as the amount stays under a set limit. The base concentrate, the thick fruit syrup everything starts from, can sit in tanks for a year or longer. Those tanks often develop a brown, sticky crust around the edges. The fruit pulp is no better. It can include bruised, fermented, or insect-damaged fruit that gets sterilized during pasteurization. On the bottling line, belts coated in sticky sugar residue can attract fruit flies if cleaning slips. Some juices even settle into a sludge layer at the bottom that you only notice if you shake the bottle. Once you see all this, the word fresh starts to feel like a joke. Pre-shredded cheese looks convenient, but once you understand what really goes into it, you might think twice before tossing a bag into your cart. To keep the shreds from sticking together, factories coat them with cellulose or starch. On paper, cellulose sounds harmless. In reality, a lot of it comes from wood pulp, and the cheaper stuff can literally come from sawdust that gets swept off mill floors, ground into powder, and sent off as food-ready material. This powder keeps the cheese loose in the bag, but it also ruins the melt. That's why pre-shredded cheese often turns into a chalky, grainy mess instead of melting into a smooth layer. What you don't see is what happens in some of these plants. When the shredders run, they blast fine cheese dust into the air. It settles everywhere, on machines, vents, railings, even the floor. When the next batch runs, that same dust gets blown back into the new cheese. In humid weather, the cellulose coating can clump and turn into gray, damp specks that end up right in the bag. Some places even trim away mold spots on cheese blocks and shred the rest. Walk into certain storage rooms and the smell hits you immediately. A sour mix of old milk and sawdust hanging in the air. Fake maple syrup looks harmless, but most bottles are really just high fructose corn syrup mixed with flavor chemicals and brown dye. Some brands add less than 1% real maple just so they can legally mention it on the label. High fructose corn syrup is made by taking cornstarch and breaking it down into sugar using enzymes that come from certain types of fungus. The caramel coloring added to make it look like real maple, class 4, can create a chemical called 4-MEI, which has been linked to cancer. None of this even comes close to the real process of boiling 40 gallons of pure maple sap down to 1 gallon of true syrup. The disturbing parts start earlier in the factory. Corn syrup plants handle giant open vats, which are basically huge industrial tubs used to hold and mix liquids. Inside them is a thick glucose goo, a sticky gel-like syrup made from processed corn sugar. If the vats are not sealed properly, insects swarm the surface and have to be skimmed out. During production, the kettles used to make caramel coloring build up a layer of burnt, sticky chemical sludge at the bottom. Workers have to scrape this sludge out with tools before the next batch can start. Cheap syrups often end up with burnt sugar flakes because the mixture overheats. These flakes settle at the bottom of the bottle. Even the maple flavoring is not natural. Some versions come from smoke condensates made in industrial labs, which are basically liquids collected from burned wood smoke and turned into maple flavor. Once you see how dirty the process can get, it's hard to pour this stuff on pancakes without thinking about what it really is. Processed bacon looks delicious in ads, but factory bacon is pumped full of water, phosphates, and nitrites. The nitrites keep the meat pink and create the flavor people expect, but they can form dangerous compounds when cooked at high heat. The water injection makes the bacon heavier, so you pay more, and explains why it shrinks into thin strips when you cook it. The smoke flavor is often sprayed on as a chemical liquid not produced by real smoke. The gross parts start inside the plant. Some bacon slabs include leftover rind pieces that get ground in to bulk up the batch. The artificial smoke tanks leave behind sticky brown residue that coats the machinery and smells like burnt chemicals. If too many phosphates are added, the bacon brine turns milky white and thick. Workers describe that smell as a mix of spoiled meat, chemicals, and fake sweetness. Once you realize that your bacon is pumped with water, coated in chemical smoke, and cured in vats that smell like chemical rot, it stops feeling like a simple breakfast food. Fraudulent olive oil. Most people buy extra virgin olive oil without knowing that a huge portion of it is fake or heavily diluted. Real EVU is expensive, so some producers cut it with soybean, sunflower, or canola oil. They add chlorophyll for color and fake flavor compounds to mimic the taste of olives. Cheap oils spoil faster and can become harmful when oxidized, but consumers often can't tell the difference because they've never tasted true olive oil. Inside the storage facilities is where the disturbing parts appear. Huge tanks can build up sludge from rancid oils that settle at the bottom. Some counterfeit blends use deodorized seed oils, which are oils already spoiled, then chemically stripped of their smell. Fraudulent producers sometimes heat low-quality oils to hide bad odors, creating harsh fumes that fill the facility. In some investigations, insect debris from harvesting equipment was found floating in bulk shipments. When you learn how easy it is to fake olive oil and how dirty some operations can be, it becomes clear that the bottle on the shelf may not be what you think it is. Chicken stock cubes. Chicken stock cubes seem convenient, but most of them are more than 50% salt mixed with artificial chicken flavor and preservatives. Many contain less than 1% actual chicken. The yellow-brown color may come from dyes originally derived from coal tar. The chicken flavor itself is often made in fermentation vats, not from poultry. The disturbing details start inside the low-grade factories. The powder that gives the cube its chicken taste often includes fat powders made from low-grade rendered scraps, which are the parts of poultry that no one would buy on their own. Hydrogenated oils leave a waxy film on mixers, and pieces of that buildup can chip off during production. Cube molds sometimes trap tiny pockets of air that contain stale or rancid odors. If the powder blend sits too long in humid air, a yellow crust can form on top before it gets packaged.
For generations, we've known that true vitality comes from within. At Shabazz Holistic Health Services, we guide you back to your body's natural balance by honoring the wisdom of nature and holistic care. In today's world, toxins and stress challenge our health. That's why our approach is built on 3 pillars: elimination, detoxification, and education. We don't just treat symptoms, we address root causes and empower you to take control of your health. Our services include personalized consultations, specialized detox programs, and nutritional and lifestyle guidance designed to support deep healing and lasting energy. We also believe knowledge is power. Through our educational platforms, we help you stay informed and engaged in your own wellness journey.
Now is the time to invest in your well-being. Choose natural healing and lasting vitality. Contact Shabazz Holistic Health Services today and begin your journey to a healthier, balanced life.
This channel is a welcoming space for everyone, from doctors, surgeons, psychologists, nurses, health workers, lawyers, judges, pastors, bishops, regular people who want to take care of their own health naturally, especially those who seek a natural, holistic approaches to health challenges, or simply expanding their knowledge. Whether you are well or facing health issues, you are warmly invited to be part of our community. Because of love, we invite you to join us. Our seminars and conferences explore a range of chronic health challenges and how to deal with them by using natural remedies. Section 1 of our seminar. This section focuses on educating men about natural prostate care, including guidance for those diagnosed with prostate enlargement or cancer. It also addresses Urinary health concern such as kidney and liver problems, sexual dysfunction, diabetes, hypertension, fostering information, discussion, and support. Section 2, we warmly invite our esteemed sisters and mothers to join us in addressing critical health matters including cold, breast cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, fibroids, menopause issue, breast control pills and its side effects, all women health concerns. In a spirit of unity and care, we engage in open discussion to promote awareness and prevention and mutual support.
At Shabazz Holistic Health Services, in today's world, toxins and stress challenge our health. That's why our approach is built on 3 pillars: elimination, detoxification, and education. We don't just treat symptoms, we address root causes and empower you to take control of your health. We also believe knowledge is power. Through our educational platforms, we help you stay informed and engaged in your own wellness journey.
Now is the time to invest in your well-being. Choose natural healing and lasting vitality. Contact Shabazz Holistic Health Services today and begin your journey to a healthier, balanced life.
Our program empowers you to take natural responsibility for your health through education, guidance, and hands-on training. We focus on helping the body to eliminate, detoxify, and neutralize toxins accumulated over the years from our foods, our drinks, our medications, our lifestyle. Please watch a video, and afterward we will share simple, practical, holistic health approaches to help support and restore the body after years of stress and exposure. Please do me a favor, like, share the video. Meet you on the next video.